Belgorod lost 2 bridges in a single night. Crimea has lost its last railway ferry. Not a single one is working anymore. The southern grouping of the Russian army has found itself in a logistical trap from which it seems there is no way out. Today we'll break down exactly what happened to the bridges in the Belgorod region. Why has Crimea been left without ferries and fuel? How are drones turning off the lights for the entire peninsula, and most importantly, what could this lead to in the near future? Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. To understand the scale of the strike, it's worth first recalling how the supply of Russian troops in the south is organized in general. So Russia has 2 main routes. The first is the so-called land corridor through the occupied parts of Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions, which connects Rostov-on-Don with Crimea via Mariupol, Berdyansk and Melitopol. The second is the Kerch Bridge along with the ferry crossing. Everything moves along these 2 arteries: fuel, ammunition, equipment, food supplies and personnel. Ukraine has been attacking both routes for several months now, and right now this campaign is reaching a new level. Let's start with the Belgorod region. On the night of July 7th, the defense forces struck 2 road bridges in the Valuysky district near Urazovo and Shelayevo. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the occupiers used them to transport equipment, ammunition and personnel. The strike targeted routes leading toward the Kupiansk direction. And this means one thing: the supply lines for the Russian group there could become significantly more complicated in the coming weeks. That same day, the oil depot at the Belgorod airfield was hit. A series of explosions occurred in the city itself. There were reported disruptions to electricity and water supply, and a fire broke out at one of the main gas pipeline facilities. The regional governor Alexander Shuvayev called it a massive missile attack. It is worth noting here that Moscow's official rhetoric traditionally downplays the scale of such strikes, so the real consequences are likely more serious than what is publicly acknowledged. Now about Crimea. That same night, the defense forces struck 2 more railway bridges near Rozdolne and Ichky. This is not the first strike on these facilities. Earlier attacks on the bridges over the North Crimean Canal led to a paralysis of railway traffic on the peninsula. And here an interesting detail emerges. According to the spokesperson of the Ukrainian Navy, Dmytro Pletenchuk, not a single railway ferry, which previously provided a connection between Krasnodar Krai and Crimea, is currently operating at all. And even earlier, Ukrainian forces disabled the Kerch ferry crossings car ferries, the Pantegia and the Lavrentii. As a result, according to military analysts, automobile logistics at the entrances to Crimea are operating at no more than 30% of their usual capacity. The occupation authorities have already introduced restrictions on fuel sales to 20 liters and have implemented coupons and QR codes. Only emergency and utility services are allowed to refuel. The holiday season on the peninsula has effectively been ruined. Bookings have dropped by almost 60% compared to last year, and children's camps and recreation centers are not accepting organized groups of children until September 1st.
According to his data, in the first week of July, 44 energy hubs were successfully attacked on the occupied peninsula and in the southern part of the temporarily occupied territories. After the drone attacks, the occupiers are complaining about a difficult situation with the electricity supply in Crimea. According to media outlets opposed to the Kremlin, yesterday was already the 2nd day of blackout on the peninsula. Full restoration of electricity supply on the peninsula was achieved only in Kerch. Yesterday, 12 out of 14 districts in Crimea were left without power. Let me remind you, Ukraine is striking energy facilities in Crimea to disrupt enemy military logistics, since substations supply, among other things, the occupiers' military bases and airfields.
These are not just numbers for a report. Strikes on energy facilities follow the same principle as with bridges. Substations supply not only residential neighborhoods but also the occupiers' military bases and airfields. Turning off the power means disabling part of the logistics chain, and it seems that this is exactly what this campaign is aiming for. In total, just in June, 15 bridges used by Russia for military logistics were hit in the occupied territories. And in that same month, 31 air defense systems and radar stations in Crimea were put out of action. this is a critically important moment. The fewer air defense systems the occupiers have, the more freely Ukrainian drones and missiles can operate against logistics, depots, airfields, and command posts. Navy spokesperson Pletenchuk directly called this a multi-stage operation that lasts not months but years. First, they destroyed maritime logistics, then the railway ferries, and at the same time, they were knocking out air defense systems. And now let's take a look at how this appears, not from the headquarters reports, but directly on the battlefield.
Everything they spot, anything that's moving, they immediately fly there and strike it. Part of the crews monitor the front line just in case something pops up somewhere, while the other part simply takes off and heads out to hunt.
The crews of the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade now hunt Muscovites with weapons around the clock, practically without interruption. How long have you been at it now?
10?
10 hours?
Yes.
And how many have you seen today already?
Hundreds. How many of those did you see? Around 5. Those are the ones we engaged. You can easily get up to 10 on a good day.
We help in counter-battery operations against enemy artillery, we target enemy pilots, and we also strike at enemy logistics. We prevent vehicles and transport from delivering supplies to the enemy's frontline positions. Fuel, ammunition, drones, and personnel as well.
Their remotely piloted reconnaissance and strike drones called Sons of Course, which is the name of the 128th Battalion of Unmanned Systems, are now mostly being deployed to the south of Zaporizhzhia.
The brigade sector starts from Valuysky and includes Stepnohirsk. These are the settlements controlled specifically by the armed forces of Ukraine.
Stepnohirsk too?
Yes. Well, as of today, our units are stationed in Stepnohirsk.
In the area from the eastern shore of what was once the full-flowing Kakhovka Reservoir to Mali Sherbeki, Ukrainian soldiers are now trying to push the enemy as far south as possible, says the battalion commander. But the Muscovites, Stepanovich admits, are not sitting idly by either.
There are certain attempts by the enemy to infiltrate our lines, including into Mali Sherbaki. This is happening in the near future. Very often now they are advancing here in this direction. They also have not abandoned their intentions to re-enter Stepnohirsk and establish a foothold there.
On the Melitopol direction, the Russian command has assembled a tactical group consisting of a couple of motorized rifle divisions from 2 combined arms armies, reinforced by regiments from 4 airborne assault divisions and a special forces brigade.
They are well equipped. These aren't just some random troops, they're properly trained. They're increasing the number of units because the assault regiments that were stationed here have been worn down, and they need to restore their strength. They've now sent in additional airborne troops here, as well as more assault units.
Another thing is that Ukrainian soldiers, not least the drone crews of the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade, have already dealt heavy blows to those enemy forces and continue to carry out their work relentlessly.
Something's moving among the ruins.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Yes, it's standing there.
The only way is to fly in there with a big F-Tavia loaded with a proper high explosive and blow up all the underground shelters.
Here, as in most other sectors of the front, only isolated enemy infantrymen try to slip forward. In most cases, they are detected from the air and destroyed by Ukrainian drones.
Mainly, these are groups of 2 or 3 men, who can be spread out from each other by 3 or 4 kilometers. Usually we detect all of them and start delivering strikes.
At the same time, Tarantino assures that Moscow's military equipment doesn't even come close to the front line. The crews of the 128th strike drones destroy it while it's still in enemy rear positions. Sometimes it happens right on the move.
When did you last see a tank pass the edge?
Tanks don't drive here.
For a long time?
Yeah, a long time ago. They won't make it here. We destroyed the MLRs. We were flying, saw it firing. They fired a whole salvo right away, damn it, because they realized we were there. They tried to run but didn't make it.
It is precisely thanks to systematic and accurate strikes on enemy rear positions that the Russians have not been able to approach Zaporizhzhia, Tokse is convinced. The duty officer of the 128th Brigade's BPS from the command post Sons of Course had just been adjusting the fire for one of these strikes.
Energy logistics. About 15 minutes ago, we struck a motorcycle. We arrived, found an empty trailer, found the motorcycle, and struck the motorcycle. It's already a minus. It won't be able to go anymore. It's really noticeable because even from the intercepted communications, you can hear them saying they need water, 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 but there's no water. Why? Because we're hitting their logistics.
This is what the General Staff's statistics are talking about, but only from the inside. when drone pilots report that the Russians can't even deliver water to the front line. This is not an exaggeration, but a direct confirmation that the logistical collapse we see on the bridges in Belgorod region and the ferries in Crimea is being repeated on a smaller scale on every section of the front where a Ukrainian drone can reach. So the picture looks like this. Russia is simultaneously losing its rail, road and sea logistics in the southern direction. Bridges are burning faster than they can be repaired. Ferries are at a standstill, and even civilians have to receive fuel with ration cards. For the Russian military group in Crimea, this means one thing: the cost of holding the peninsula is rising, the time needed to deliver ammunition and equipment is increasing, and with it, their vulnerability to new strikes grows. This is already being felt now on the fronts in Zaporizhzhia and Kupiansk. The occupiers are trying to build up reserves, bringing in additional divisions and regiments, but without fuel, ammunition, and even drinking water, the effectiveness of these reserves declines. The only question is how long Russia can maintain such logistics before it starts to break down systematically, not just in isolated cases. Is Russia capable of holding on to Crimea if its logistics continue to collapse at this rate? And what will come first? A supply collapse or an attempt by Moscow to find new bypass routes at any cost? Share your thoughts about what you've heard in the comments. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. See you next time.